in dealing with the technical glitch. So the first thing on the agenda is roll call. And so after I call your name, please introduce yourself and your function. Cindy? Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on, one more thing.
Oh,
I need to announce that the meeting is going to be recorded. Are you recording already, Mira, or?
Just hit it. It's just, it's spinning, but it's on its way.
Okay, very good.
There we go.
Okay, awesome. All right. Okay, Cindy, please.
Cindy Watola, parent rep.
Kirsten,
Kirsten Clay, parent rep.
Sarah,
Sarah Ogato, parent rep.
Mira,
Mira Weber, principal.
Nick,
Nick Hall, teacher rep.
Mac,
Mac Laboon, community rep.
Lori,
Lori Vietz, parent rep.
Emily,
Emily Holbert, teacher rep.
Marilyn,
She's having issues. She's logging in, trying to.
okay. Kate, did I say Kate already? Kate?
Kate Kaczynski, parent rep, and I will be on camera in a few minutes. I'm just running late getting home.
No worries, thank you. And I am Tina Holder King, parent rep. I think we have everyone in attendance.
Sorry, Sandra is not here. I don't know if you said that.
No, I think you mentioned it before, but yeah, we do have her. She did let us know that she was not going to be joining us. It's so the first. I'm hearing an echo. Is anyone else hearing it? Okay. The next item is the approval of the agenda. Is there a motion?
I motion.
Is there a second?
I second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, it has been motioned and second to approve the agenda as provided. We'll vote by roll call. Cindy?
Here.
Kirsten?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Mira?
Sorry, I was on. Yep.
Nick?
Yes.
Mac?
Yes.
Lori?
Yes.
Got quite an echo. Emily?
Yes.
And let's see, did Marilyn make it on yet or no?
I did, Tina. I'm sorry,
Okay.
my camera's not working.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you, Marilyn.
My camera's not working.
Oh, no worries. Okay, so is what's your vote on the motion?
Yes.
We
Okay.
have 11 yeas. Oh, sorry.
That's okay. Yes. Okay, what's the
11 yeas. Unanimous.
Okay. The next item is approval of the minutes. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, it has been motioned and second for approval of the minutes as provided by the LSC secretary. Is there any discussion? There's only one item that needs correction, and that is for, I'm sorry, let me find it. Oh my goodness, too much going on. Hang on. I'm sorry. My daughter is at the door. Hang on. Okay, sorry about that. All right, so there is one correction to the minutes for the item for the vote to maintain confidentiality of closed session. For that item, which is item 10, the first sentence, it says per FOIA OMA requirement tasked with revoting to continue to keep closed sessions, records, and minutes closed. That second close should say confidential because we're voting to keep them confidential. So I will make that correction to the minutes. So I would like to amend the motion. Mac, if you would be willing to amend your motion to approve the minutes with the correction I just indicated.
I move to approve the minutes with the correction that was just indicated.
Is there a second?
I second.
Is there further discussion? Okay, if there's no further discussion, we'll vote by roll call on approval of the minutes. Cindy?
Yes.
Emily?
Yes.
Marilyn?
Did you say
Marilyn.
Oh.
Did you vote, Marilyn?
I think everyone has to be on mute other than the speaker.
Okay, but let's see. I think she's. Okay, Sarah,
Yes.
Mira,
Yes.
Nick,
Yes.
Mac,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Kirsten,
Yes.
Kate.
Yes.
Okay, and Marilyn, we're coming back to you.
Yeah.
Okay, great. The count?
That's unanimous, 11.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is the principal report. Mira, I just put it in this order as far as A and B for this particular agenda item, but it's up to you how you want to proceed. If you'd rather do CPS reopening first. Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped one, didn't I? So the next item on the agenda is Sergeant at Arms. And this item is to discuss with potential nomination and vote to elect a Sergeant at Arms for the board. We've talked about this previously, and it was supposed to be on the agenda last month, and I neglected to put it on there. And so I will begin with a nomination of Mac for Sergeant at Arms. Is there a second?
I'll second it, Lori.
Okay, is there discussion? Okay, if there's no discussion. No, go ahead.
Just clarification. So what, because I was looking like in the CPS, the LSC guide, and like, what are we thinking the Sergeant at Arms would do everything that's in the CPS guidelines? Because I feel like a lot of that we have other people already doing. So with that, like the whole like getting the public participation, sign in and posting the minutes or posting the agenda, all of that. So like in the guidelines, that's what suggested the Sergeant at Arms would do. Are we still thinking so that Mac would be doing all of that? Or okay.
Well, and in addition to that, considering that we are in a virtual space, part of that role, and it's in one of the is in the bylaws as a potential edit for approval, is that they would also be kind of in charge of manning the chat in the virtual space.
Until we approve bylaws, I don't know how we can approve this position as it's outlined in the bylaws. I don't know how we can approve a position that we have not yet defined because we have not yet approved the bylaws and the bylaws have not yet been reviewed.
Well, it's in the guidance that a sergeant at arms can be elected. So it doesn't have to be in our bylaws in order to elect a sergeant at arms. We are free to elect other officers as we see fit. And it doesn't just have to be the organizational meeting.
No, right. What I'm saying is it needs to be articulated then because we haven't reviewed bylaws. So I don't know if everyone understands what the role is. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, other than what's in the guidebook, I mean, I can read the information from the guidebook, but it is there in the guidebook as far as members who would like to see verbatim what the role is, but also, as we discussed previously, also just a person who basically helps to maintain order during meetings. If there would ever come up a question as far as how to proceed as far as Robert's Rule of Order, then the sergeant at arms would be the person who we would look to have that information. Some additional things that could potentially be based on how we decide what the role is could also be timekeeping for public participation, as well as potentially suggesting some norms to better increase the efficiency of our meetings. We have long agendas and we need to move through it respectful of everyone's time, efficient and doing our bidding and doing our charge, I should say, but respectful of everyone's time. So those are the things as far as the role sergeant at arms will be doing. Is there any additional discussion or questions? Okay, we'll vote by roll call. Cindy,
Yes.
Emily,
Abstain.
Marilyn,
Abstain.
Sarah,
Yes.
Mira,
No.
Nick,
No.
Mac,
Yes.
Lori,
Yes.
Kirsten,
Yes.
Kate, Kate,
It showed that she left the meeting. She's probably just getting into the house from her car.
okay. All right. I will vote yes. Yeah, I don't see Kate. Did you happen to notice when she left? Well, there she is. Kate, did you hear the discussion for Sergeant at Arms?
I did not because my phone was doing this weird thing that I couldn't hear anyone talk. So sorry. But I think I've had conversations and I'm okay with voting based on conversation about the need for the position.
We're in the middle of the vote, I should say at the end of the vote for Sergeant at Arms. It has been moved and seconded and discussed.
Okay.
So we would need your vote.
I vote yes.
Sarah, what's the count, please?
Sure. Check my numbers. I have 7 yeas. I have 2 nays, and 2 abstains and 1 absent.
Okay. So the motion passes with 7 in favor. The next item on the agenda is the principal report. Mira?
Sorry. I'm just trying to think of the best way to do this. So there's a lot to cover. And I think that probably the equity analysis is going to take the bulk. So I don't know if people want to ask questions about my report first, and then we can move into kind of reopening updates and equity analysis. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, so I can just do update on reopening. Had a Tuesday with Mira yesterday, sent out that presentation and linked it to the website. We have had three successful days, 2 being in person, 1 being Wellness Wednesday, which is today, which is all remote. Roughly 144 students who had opted to return pre-K through 8th grade. And right now we have currently gone pre-K to 5 in person, 6 through 8 returns next week. Incredibly grateful for the support of Friends of Bulldogs, who have helped us in addition to the number of different technology pieces that CPS provided to ensure that we had additional technology, ensured that we had flexible seating options for students, sanitation bins, different bins to store coats and backpacks. So we have had a really great 2 days. In terms of feedback, wanting to make sure that in Tuesdays with Mira, I received feedback from families who had both returned in person as well as remained in the remote environment, and got positive feedback kind of on both ends. Couple tech pieces that need to be worked out in terms of being able to hear the students who are in person if they're not individually logged into the Meet, the students at home being able to hear them. So we're working on additional microphones or ways to kind of solve for that situation. Couple situations with tech dropping in and out. We just put out to staff today trying to problem solve. We had the tech department out last week to figure out bandwidth capabilities. Our access points are okay. So we are trying to figure out now when people are having problems or when people are dropping. Is it because too many are on? What time of day? Is it based on where you are in the building? So we're troubleshooting that right now. And so we got very positive feedback on both ends in terms of change to schedules, things of that nature. So in this Sunday's principal post, I will have a survey for families at large. So there was roughly 25 at the Tuesdays with Mira. I will have a survey in this weekend's principal's post about kind of hybrid learning and getting feedback specific to the model that you're learning in, whether learning at home or learning in person, as well as just kind of overall questions that everybody could ask regardless of learning environment, so that we'll have a broader range of feedback. So look for that this weekend, but overall a very smooth 3 days, and just incredibly pleased with all the support from families, tireless work of staff, and the students being so adaptable, and just those who were in person coming in and just, you would never know that they weren't there for a year. And those at home just really being patient and, excited to see their classrooms from far. So just a really positive few days. So look for that survey. Definitely looking for all the feedback we can get in terms of solidifying the plans. And then also as we expand out for 6th or 8th return next week. And then again, when that survey comes out from CPS about anyone who does want to return in person 4th quarter, making sure that our plans will transfer if we see a larger number come back in person. So I don't yet know when that survey will be coming out, but I will certainly keep people updated on that. So that's quick on reopening. I don't know if there's questions about that or in general my principal report, and then we can move into equity analysis after that.
I have a question. Were you able to get, I know some schools were able to almost double their internet bandwidth through CPS. Were we able to do that at all?
Our bandwidth was increased, and to be honest, I don't understand the technology, like the names or how that goes. But yes, we had a large increase in bandwidth. I can't give you exact like percentages or numbers, just beyond my capacity, but we did have work done and our bandwidth was increased. It was doubled, but I don't know what that means it went to, so to say.
Just wanted to make sure we were getting what the other schools were getting.
Absolutely.
Hey, Mayor, I have a question about the out of school time grant and the activities that are being offered. I did see the yoga and mindfulness from the 7th grade teacher from Miss Welsh. Just wondering with the other offerings, how are they being communicated?
The other programs that are being offered, sorry, like, okay. Mr. Hall, I'm going to actually let you chime in on that since you've been kind of facilitating that grant.
Yes. So for the
Well done, by the way, Nick. Good job.
oh, thank you. For the various programs, you know, I pretty much, once we received the grant, or once we were notified we received it right after winter break, I just emailed the whole staff letting them know the money was there for anyone who wanted to do a after school program, and that everything would be done virtually. So it really was up to the teachers. They decided what they wanted to do, which grade levels they wanted to reach out to, and I really I gave them suggestions, but let it up to them. Of, you know, some already had, like, certain students had already expressed interest in class, some reached out to the whole class, some reached out to grade levels. But so yeah, there was no one unique way of doing it. So I know with the I could check back and see if you're talking yoga and mindfulness. So that one is run by Miss Callahan and Miss Buchan. And I know they have a wide range. They have everything from 3rd through 8th grade in there. So I don't exactly know how they reached out, what they chose to do, but I can find out more if you want, Tina.
Yeah, I do remember hearing about the yoga and mindfulness from Miss Welsh, but I don't recall hearing some of the others. And so that's why I was just wondering how they were communicated. So yeah, if you could follow up with that information, just in case others missed it and you know would like the opportunity to participate, I think it'd be good information to get out again if we can.
Yeah, I can definitely remind all of our out of school staff, you know, if they want to try reaching out again in case they missed anyone, they can do that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, you know, I guess probably the first question is, how did they reach out? Because we want to make sure it was extended to everyone equitably. And I'm not saying that I didn't miss some outreach. It's very possible that I missed the email or something, but I just don't recall hearing about them. And so that's the first question. And then the second question would be if something needs to be done to make sure we rectify that if we did not give everyone an equal opportunity to participate.
I'll add, I didn't hear about it either. And again, quite possibly is somewhere in my email, but I did not see about it. So I'll be paying more attention to.
Mayor, I just have a question, and I'm not sure if this is somewhere and I just didn't see it, but do we have, like, what number of students are back in the building for the different grades?
Yeah, I can pull up, it's in all of the, in all of the Tuesdays with Mira presentations that are linked in my report. The second or third slide is all of the numbers for those returning in person and those staying hybrid or staying at home. So if you click on any of the 3 Tuesday with Mira presentations under competency D, I just don't have them up in front of me, but they've been pretty much out there. I think I did 3 in December, 3 in January, 3 in February, something like that. The numbers have been up in every presentation pretty much from the get-go.
I guess I was asking in terms of not the survey, but how many actual students came in the building this week?
Oh, attendance, you're saying?
Yeah. I was wondering what percentage of students actually came back and were in person.
Correct. I don't have that tonight. We have some attendance we're working out in terms of how we're coding, because the way you code attendance is now different.
Different.
We have two learning environments, so I don't have that number on me tonight.
Okay.
I just wanted to congratulate you guys again on the after school grant. That's great to hear. And just echo the sentiment of making sure how we're thinking about how we're communicating that. And noted that as part of the professional development work that you, Mira and Michelle are attending the Courageous Conversations professional learning. That's a really strong training, and I'm glad to hear that you guys are being a part of that. And I don't know how you're thinking about scaling that when you come back to the school, but thinking about, how you, and another, I just finished a book called Teaching to Strengths. And when I don't know if you guys are familiar with that book, but that's another great book that's linked to Courageous Conversations. That's more classroom based, but really has a nice equity lens, recognizing students as capable and how we also recognize it as in ourselves as teachers, as staff, as family members, and how that really does resonate with who we interact with, and more specifically in the case of teachers, that would be students. Just a quick question about budget transfers. I see that's blank in the principal report. Was that intentional, or we just don't have any budget transfers to discuss today?
We don't have any transfers. I just leave it there as like I just leave it there as a placeholder, but we don't.
Awesome, thank you.
Great. Mira, what is the COVID conscious agreement? What is that?
We have COVID conscious agreements for pretty much every new procedure in the building. So we have the safety pledge that everyone is reviewing with all students. And then we have bathroom agreements, hallway agreements, entry, dismissal, basically reminding students of new procedures such as staying 6 feet apart, wearing your mask, covering with your elbow, singing the happy birthday song when you wash your hands, sanitizing when you come in the building, when you walk in your classroom or out of your classroom. So just really specific to new procedures that are in place now. And all classrooms are like doing interactive modeling with those, walking through them, talking through them, modeling them. And then we have the written kind of outline of each of them with cute little clip art figures modeling them also.
And I know at well, first of all, it's comforting to hear that there's so much reminding as far as what needs to take place. That's comforting to hear. Also, the oh man, lost my question that quick. Oh, we had heard about additional custodial staff being hired district wide for all the additional cleaning. Just wondering how that trickled down to our building, or if at all.
No, we did not get additional staff. I know there was a kind of a formula or a way they were looking at how to distribute custodians equitably across the district. I couldn't tell you what all the different criteria were, but other than we didn't get one. So we did make some shift changes to our custodians just to maximize time, kind of the best that we could on both ends when students weren't in the building, but then also when students are in the building to make sure we can cover the bathroom, the hourly bathroom cleaning, the going into pre-K in between morning and afternoon. So we did some shift changes and alignment with our 3 that we do have, but we didn't get any additional.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. If there's no more questions for me on principal report, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Sweeney, who's here to kind of talk through the renaming. And we said as part of our process, there would be an equity analysis of the different data points and the process as a whole. And so still working with them on, a lot of different pieces of our process and long-term steps. But Dr. Sweeney is here, so is Liam Bird, to kind of talk through with us the analysis that their team has done since our the formal renaming kind of that survey ended. So I am going to ask Dr. Sweeney to take over.
Good evening, everyone. what is today, Wednesday? Happy Wednesday. I appreciate you adding me to your agenda tonight to talk about the equity analysis and what we've learned. Some of the data might already sound familiar. We've been saying some things about this process throughout our time together. I can't believe I feel like it's almost been a year. When you look back at young people being out of school, almost 365 days, and that you're taking up this journey in the middle of a pandemic, which I think has its rewards, it has its benefits. I think one of the things that we've learned in general is people are really activated to make transformation. A part of this is based on the pandemic and the results of the disparities that the pandemic has highlighted, but also looking at and paying attention to the racial injustices, particularly Black men being killed by police officers. We know that during the summer with the murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, it really, really heightened for us. For some, it re-traumatized others. And I think a part of that had become a part of the motivation for what do we do to do systemic transformation, to cause, to create spaces for respect and community. And then how do we take up the work of not just thinking about what the name change is like, but also what does it mean for us as a school community and how do we navigate those spaces? So as an Office of Equity, we have just taken the policy to be owned by the Office of Equity. Essentially, we plan to go before the board after we talk about engaging stakeholders, including you all. I'll come back to that in a second, to really, really revise this policy based on some of the things that we've learned and figure out a clear path for supports for schools who are taking up race and equity work. We believe that a name change could result in only a cosmetic change if we're not clear about what our values are, if we're not clear about understanding equity and racial equity, if we're not clear about what does it mean to do really justice work by looking at our student data and making decisions around what it will take to improve the student experience in school. So we see the name change process as an impetus. And really what we did conclude is if any school has to take up a name change or to conduct a racial equity impact assessment, it has to be done with community. And it has to give respect to what the voices of people of color are saying. Because anyone who is harmed by any system, whether it is a woman who is harmed by misogynist, whether it is a person of color being harmed by a racist or racist act, that the person who has been victimized or who is experiencing the harm needs to have a clear voice in the decisions and the processes that really help to provide the right healing space for them and also learning space and allyship and co-conspirating for others. And we say co-conspirating more than ally because co-conspirating says we will partner together and we will conspire together in a way that creates a true space for justice, a true space for healing, a true space for ongoing learning and partnership. And so what we found, first, I'll start with just the votes themselves. So I know we brought back to you all the data when you voted, I don't even remember the month. Let me scroll back through my notes. It's been so long. When you all voted for Harriet Tubman, and we provided the data. I'm actually going to send it to you all. The survey results, there were 436 participants. So we asked people in your community, teachers, LSC members and community members to give a vote. We extracted 25 duplicates, and 25 duplicates meaning someone has probably voted twice. It was attached to their emails, addresses, and so those were removed from the list. And no person who voted twice had two different names. Because if we would have saw that the person would have voted twice to have two different names, the chances are we would have either extracted both or left them in. And I think in this case, we would left them in unless we start calling people and saying, hey, who did you really mean to vote for? So with that, we disaggregated the data by race. And one of the things, I mean, you all know this, you're a multiracial school. And we disaggregated the data, and what we had was from the staff respondents was 32%, parent respondents 44%, and student respondents 82%. And the community members were 30%. And I'm sorry, these percentages I'm reading: 32% people of color, 68% white. For parents, 44% people of color, 66% white. For students, 82% students of color and 18% white. And for community members, 30% people of color and 70% white. So we really tried to really go down into the data to make to really get a clear understanding of what are people's choices and why. We will take this sort of design into the multicultural education policy that we're going to launch a process for very soon, because we really think we have an opportunity as a district to think about what does a culturally responsive education look like, and what do people across race difference really understand about culturally responsive education, anti-racism, and anti-bias. So there will be a citywide survey coming out. There will be some some evening community sessions virtually to start to engage more folks. And Liam and I and the team have already started to, take some of the practices that we learned here in our meetings and engage in community and move those over to the multicultural education policy. So you'll see that email come from CPS soon. I won't give a date. I stopped giving dates. But all of the information is ready. And what we've done is we've just been testing the survey to make sure that it works. So that's what we're doing at this time. So the results of the survey included the 3 names of Katherine Johnson, who received the overall most number of votes, Harriet Tubman, who had the second number of votes, and then Rosa Parks, who had the third number. Black voters prioritized Katherine Johnson, second, Harriet Tubman, third, Rosa Parks. Essentially, we take all of this data and we submit it to the Office of Network Supports to say, here's the data we found. And then the LSC in the previous LSC meeting selected Harriet Tubman as the person for the renaming. So what we do is we submit a memo to the Office of Network Supports before it goes to the board. And then we say, here's the ranking of these, the school names. Chief Bojana Shakumbava, who is the chief of networks, she will review all this data, and then it goes to the board afterward. So before I get into the qualitative side of this, any questions about the data itself? Let me move my screen so I can see you all. There we go.
I'm sorry, Dr. Sweeney, I'm a very visual person, and so I hear what you're telling me, and I'm taking quick notes here. Has this data been shared? The analysis?
There we go. See my chart?
Thank you.
Sarah, it's also the slides from the December LSC meeting that I can share if people want to see it after.
Thank you, Mayor.
Here's why we disaggregate down to race. And it is also one of the reasons why we will do race and gender and quite a few other cuts of the data. An essential part of this is people, we know Chicago is a segregated city. I don't know if people feel comfortable with saying that. I feel comfortable with saying that. We know that there are only a few communities where there are racial integration, if you will. This is one of them. There are a few schools that sort of border multiple communities. And we know a part of the school choice policy, one of the reasons why it was initially existed is to do work on some system integration. But we also know that there are multiple ways in which GoCPS or other policies can also reinforce segregation. So as a district, we're paying attention to all of those things. All of that is extremely important to us. But ultimately, we want schools to be, whether you are a single race school or a majority of one particular racial group, whether you're a multiracial school, what we do know is that everyone benefits when we have cultural expression, culturally responsive education, because when we think about society as a whole, our workplaces, the people we see, we are always interacting across race and difference. That is the reality we live in. And so it is important that even in schools where there are, I would say, limited number or more homogenous groups, or, you know, places where you live in one part of the city and the majority of your school looks like people like you, and in other places not. All of that at the end of the day is important. Teaching people what it means to be anti-biased, to understand each other across difference is critical. So with that frame, the question is, so where do we go from here? I'm gonna stop screen sharing so I could see you all, because I do actually wanna say a few things and ask some questions. Here's what we learned. Many of you on this call had expressed thoughts 3 years before this process. When we came to this process, people were asking questions about, you know, is this the right time to do this work? And I'm glad that the Office of Equity is existing in this space to support those efforts. Because what I believe, even with good intention, people can still cause harm. And what I have learned over the years is intent does not equal impact. And so wrestling with ideas about race in school is pretty complex. If it were easy, people would have done it already. And your school is not an anomaly. What we found was we started to go through the data, and we'll publicly release something at some point. We started to review multiple names, looking at the names of schools. One of the things that we learned in this process was how do you look at a person's body of work? How do you look at a series of events that happen over time? How do you look at what a person produced to make a decision around, does this person represents racism, or racist ideas? And what does that mean for any school? So there's another school right now that Andrew Jackson, it's less heard about right now, but they're going through the same process. And there are some other schools that we will recommend to the board to go through a name change process. When we looked at the policy, we realized that the policy essentially says you can have 2 community meetings and then come up with a name or a group of names, submit those, and then we're done. And the question that we asked ourselves as an equity team, based off of the emails and the conversations that we heard from you, was, so is that enough to change a name? Is that enough to transform a school culture? Is that enough to move things forward? And what we found and what we learned from our experiences working with you, that it was not. And we want to make sure that we transform the policy so that it pushes on something that I think you all have done exceptionally well and that you all should be extremely proud of, is including student voice and making sure that student agency and student power was a critical part of this work. And we actually want to take that learning, and as we come back to you to talk about focus groups, we actually want to move that into the policy, that if we're going to change the name of a school, we have to engage the young people who are in that school. And so what we know is, and I know Principal Weber, I give a shout out to your teachers. Virtually, it was a lot to experience when you can't actually be with the people and wrestle with these ideas in person, and that they took up that work. We recognize people didn't always get it right, but they were trying, and then we support it, and then it got better every single time. And I think that is a critical part of this work, is not only do we engage the faculty, the staff, and the students, but also how do we make this a part of the curriculum opportunity for teaching and learning? And so the second thing I want to mention that we learned from the equity analysis is student agency is critical and learning is critical, so that students can have different insights and we can also begin to understand their experiences in school. So those are 2 critical parts that we take away from the analysis of this work. We recognize there are some other pieces that we will make recommendations for, not necessarily for the policy, but just to talk about professional learning opportunities. We know that teachers have engaged in some, and we also want to recommend to you all, what does the work of us as an LSC, or technically you all as an LSC, what does that anti-racist, anti-bias work look like for you? And what I mean by that is not only like what do we say in support of the students in school, but what do we wrestle with as a group? This work has influenced what we are in design for right now, is how do we help schools develop equity teams to do their own internal social and racial justice work and in support of the school community. So we will still participate with that, but we think that those are some critical elements that we will continue to bring out. And so at some point, Liam Bird is going to email you all, because we do realize we need to do focus groups with different groups of people. Before I get to the focus groups, let me also say it is because of speaking with you that we learned it wasn't just about having 2 community meetings. There had to be a separate space for people of color. What we found is there were some things that people of color needed to express in a different space that was more about safety, that was more about avoiding unnecessary misunderstandings, that was really about, here is how we see our students in this school, and here is how we see the experience. And from us, from the Office of Equity in the CPS Equity Framework, we say targeted universalism is the way we approach equity. How do we get student groups to the goal? And what we also want to make sure is when we say student groups to the goal, even though we might say, for example, students with limited language proficiency or bilingual students, if we say students with disability or accessibility needs, we have to still consider, what does that mean for students of color? What does that mean for the different racial groups? Because if not, equity will get lost and it'll just be another thing. So we believe that in order to support you all moving forward, we want to talk about the makeup of your equity team. We want to share some documents with you and share some learning with you. And then you all can also come back and tell us, how do you see us supporting you? More than how do we come and support you? So we think that there is a learning opportunity. You know, as an Office of Equity, we always want to learn and continue to get better at supporting this work. And I do believe we've gone through a lot of trainings and a lot of experiences with multiple schools around the city, but we always stand by a learner stand. So what might that equity work look like for us? We also believe that there has to be ongoing data analysis disaggregated by race, gender, and gender expression. What we did not know or could not determine is, do we have LGBTQ students who need our support, and how does that look? And how do we know? How do we make sense of that? And then once again, what is the learning for us as a constituency? The beauty and the complexity of having a very diverse school is that there are diversities within diversities. And so making sure that we disaggregate data in multiple ways to really get down to make the school a welcoming place for everyone is what we seek. And here's what I've learned as a principal, and I really learned over the last 2.5 years. The person who determines if it is a welcoming place is based on the person who is having the experience. And so that way, we do have some tools that help us better understand student experiences. And I also see this as an opportunity for you all as a community to wrap yourselves around the school. And I want to raise up something that I noticed. I think this has to be about partnership. I will tell you, the last time I was in this meeting, I said, listen, creating a lot of committees, you're going to find yourself in committee paralysis. And I tell you that from experience. What I will say is that if you should have a commitment to something, it should be to the equity team to develop that and then determine where do we need to do these committees, and are each of them necessary? In what ways might we support Principal Weber in refining any particular process within the school? So I'm gonna pause there. I have 3 more things, but I feel like I'm throwing a lot at you. Any reactions or questions to what I've said so far?
I mean, Dr. Sweeney, I really am excited and look forward to continuing this work in partnership with you as a member of the LSC, and recognizing that moving forward with this work, it requires transformational shifts supported with and transactional support. So it's kind of like change in mindset, involving awareness and acknowledging that change in behavior, shifts in practices and structures and systems, policies, procedures. I mean, it's significant. And so, or just even reflecting upon that. And so, as you're describing it, that word transformational comes into play, and recognizing the lift that we're embarking upon, and how important it is to ensure, that we have the supports, that it's sustainable and ongoing, as you mentioned.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other reactions?
Sorry, having trouble getting off mute. Um, as I hear you, talk about all these things, and Sarah, you put it really, really well, the transformational piece. When I think of it all, it's hard to determine the sequence of events, and whether there are parallel paths that can be taken as far as the data analysis of our policies and our practices and things like that within the school, if that can be in parallel with the type of professional development that needs to happen, so that cultural awareness and responsibility and consideration, and how we teach what we teach becomes second nature. So just wondering, is that a role that can come from your office, that guidance? Do you have any resources in that area, as far as, how, when we move through this process, what does it behoove us to start with?
Yeah. I will hold, that's kind of leading into what I want to say next. Any other thoughts? Because what I don't want to do is leave you in, wow, this laundry list, and then it's like, so what do we do next? So we made some recommendations. Let me first reiterate, multiple schools will be on this journey, and you're out front, which means there is such a possibility for you, because you are a racially diverse community. And what I mean, it doesn't mean that anyone has to give up any part of their culture unless the culture causes harm to somebody, right? But what it means is, like, can we really, really, really do this in a way that celebrates the differences, that acknowledges that we have to learn together in order to be together? How do we do that in a way that creates authenticity, and that the burden of it doesn't rest on the shoulders of the principal, of the teachers, of the community, but that it is something that is deeply shared among everyone? And I can tell you, there are times I am frustrated with, like, government, right? And I sit closer to government than most people. One of the things I think that keeps me safe and anchored is, okay, Maurice, what do you need to learn about this situation right now? How do you need to understand it? How do you need to see it so that you can act upon it? So what we want to help people do first is do what we call the internal work. That means, how do I show up in these spaces as a blank blank? Put your race, put your gender or gender expression, and what does this work mean for me in relation to my child and the other students, or my community, or other students in the building? That is extremely complex. And what you will find is, sometimes you will get it wrong, and you have to figure out, how do we go from getting it wrong to doing it better? If you stay in spaces too long, or where the mistakes happen, unless the same mistake happens 1,000 times, right? Then we got to have a different conversation and figure out what that is. But how do we take the mistakes or the shortcomings as learning opportunities? That is what we have learned from this experience, to set people up to really, really do transformation and healing work, to really become culturally responsive. And what we've learned is, You can't do the culturally responsive work alone. It has to be what I call an ebb and flow between what do we learn, how do we heal, how do we grow, how do we teach. That is a critical component of this work. And typically it's not something that really happens in traditional American education. It's just not. Usually what we do is we create, and these MTSS systems are not bad, but it's like, oh, something's wrong with that person. They need to go over there and get that support or that service. And what we're finding is in order for healing to take place, it is more communal and it is a shared responsibility among people. So the first thing I would want you all to think about as an LSC, and however you decide to collect this information, is what do we need to heal from and what do we need to learn together? If we can start there, and the reason why I think it's important that each person responds to that question individually and then come back collectively is because you will find some things around where you align and where you don't, which is okay because we don't have to be aligned on every single thing. But we can start to get at what is the journey forward. And I think get more to action steps of the 1, 2, 3. The second thing you need to know is when we submit this information, it goes to the Office of Network Supports. I want to share with Chief Shakumbava the PowerPoints and everything else around the 3 options or the ranking of the 3 choices. And ultimately, the Office of Network Supports and the board decides. What I don't think will happen is they will be like, these names are not good names. I think they are good names. And one of the reasons why the board asked, because we went back to say, why does the board ask for like 2 or 3 names? And a part of that, the intent of the policy was to make sure that there was a process for people raising up names so that it wouldn't be, that I wouldn't go back and say, hey, this is the name I want, but that it would push people on having a process. So that's why they had multiple names. And I think in looking a little bit at the history of it, there was some things that were probably questionable back then. And it's another reason why they said that you had to have, the person would have had to pass away at least 6 months. So to stop any issues with quick selections and name stamping of schools. So that's number 2. And finally, number 3 is what do students say about their school and how do you know? So there's like, what is the us work? The name change is going to continue to move forward in that process, but there's also the student work. What do students say and how do we know? And of course, how do we find out? Not just how do we know, how do we find out? And we have some tools. We've been working with several schools with tools that are helpful. And I will say that too, this is kind of a 4th thing. You'll have to, teachers, there's a lot that teachers will have to experience. And I think it will be important to support teachers. The weight of responsibility of transformation, I will say, fortunately or not, will weigh heavy on teachers because they interact with young people more. So what does that mean for us as we support them? And lately I've been on this path of celebrating teachers because so much has happened. When you think about a strike to a pandemic to racial injustice and they're still showing up for young people, that's a lot. And so how do we take opportunities to learn and grow with them is important. So I'm gonna pause for a second. Is there any question, let me make sure I ask, is there any question about the name change process itself? My brain is jumping to what comes afterward, but I know I wanna make sure that I'm clear on, does anyone have any questions? And no, thing. We will have groups with teachers separately to learn, the LSC members separately to learn, and then a focus group with people of color separately to learn, which I may or may not be in those spaces, but we want to figure out, the policy is one thing, suggesting how to implement a policy is, and to make sure that it gets at the intention is another.
I'm sorry, I might have missed this, but did we, is there a timeline for bringing that to the board for review and vote?
Yeah, I didn't say it, so thank you, Sarah. It goes before the board March 20, it's the Wednesday of the last week in March. I'm sorry, I should have that in front of me. Let me look back at the calendar. March 24th.
Would you mind, I like listening. The first part, what do we need to heal from? What was the second part of your first statement?
Yeah.
Because that's what I'm here for. I'm here for the healing and I want to do the work, so.
A part of that is, what do we need to heal from in order to be together? Coexisting, even for like family and friends, can be hard, right? So we know there is a way to heal, and what I'm interested in is you all grappling with that individually and see what does that surface up or raise up for us.
I'm here for, where do we start? What kind of supports can we ask for? Is it the Office of Social Emotional for us as a team? Because I'm liking that you're saying that the LSC has a place in this and that we're all working together. Is it a circle? How are we going to bring it together for us as parent reps and teacher reps and staff? How are we going to do that work, and what kind of supports will be there for that?
Yeah, thank you. So I will react to what you send me. I do have ideas. One of the things to know about me is I try to avoid imposing what I think should happen, to really, really listen to the people who are responsible for the transformation and hear what comes up for them. I will say that there are multiple paths, which could include a healing circle. It could include being with one of our professional learning partners. It could include us coming back and speaking with you, but we would definitely stay connected. Principal Weber, Tina, like we would stay connected. Once that comes back to us, essentially I bring it in front of my team, because here's what I know. Other LSCs will have to learn and heal together as well. And there are a few schools who are the first of many things, and we made commitments to stick close to those schools to support, so that we can learn and give guidance to other folks.
Along those lines, I was on the LSCs for All workshop gathering on Saturday, where we brought 300 people from LSCs from all over the city, and a lot of what we talked about was the equity work, the racial justice transformation. And so it would be great to see your department represented in some of those things, but also for us as an LSC to be available to work with the other schools who are going through the process as a form of information sharing and support. So
we will definitely tap into this expertise again. People want to know, like, how do LSC start equity teams? And there is some like generalized guidance I could give them, but I try to avoid that kind of, you can find a lot of stuff on the web if you just want general stuff, but I want something that's more intentional, that I could put your names on and say co-designed by the LSC at whatever the new name of your school would be.
There's a lot of people who will be very excited to hear you say that, not just at our school.
Yeah, no, we think there's an opportunity to elevate LSCs in this way, and that's why I'm showing up and wanting to be in spaces like this. And you can hold me to my word. I'm sure people will hold me to my word. I feel like I took up a lot of time. I thought I had sort of talked through this thinking it would be like 5 minutes I was going to run through, but so I appreciate, I know it's 7:15. I appreciate it. Any other questions or wonderings? Oh, Liam too. Liam Bird is our equity policy strategist. He's been really managing a lot of this behind the scenes. Liam, is there anything that you want to add?
Hey, what's up, crew? Wonderful to be back in community with you. One thing that we did talk about with some of our senior leaders is that the World School of Excellence
Oh, yes.
actually tied to AUSL schools. So we do, in order to proceed to the board meeting, we do need to think about the final part of the school name and transitioning it from the current proposal. And then we will just have to update those, the extension of the 3 recommended names. So just wanted to mention that.
I'm glad, Liam, I forgot to mention that. Glad you said that.
Thank you, Liam. I was actually going to say, just because anyone who was on the December meeting, I think I threw up World School of Excellence as one of my examples. So in owning that, we have since become officially authorized as an IB World School. So my proposal will be that we just say World School instead of World School of Excellence. But we do have to officially vote on it so that it can be adjusted on the rankings for board submission.
Which is part of the reason why ONS gets all of this information before it goes to the board, to check against those types of things.
So is that something that needs to be voted before, did you say before it goes to the board at the end of this month?
It can't go to the board until we have that item addressed, yeah.
Okay, so we'll need a quick special meeting for that. Now, one question I have with parent engagement. I mean, I know we have plenty to sort through and think about as a board and our space in this process, not only as board members, but also our individual tie to the school as parents and staff and teachers. But how do we engage the community in the work? I mean, I understand definitely not getting too committee heavy, but other than the focus groups and forums where discussions happen, how do we pull families in and get their feedback and get their hands on, get their their suggestions, the reflection of their experiences, what's working, what's not. How do we pull them in?
Yeah.
I'm not sure who you're asking that to. Sorry.
Well, I'm sorry. Good point, Mira. Either Dr. Sweeney or Liam, either one.
Okay, definitely. In terms of the final, I just want to make sure, Tina, the final part of the name itself and how we would proceed before going to the board vote.
No, I'm talking about the work that goes beyond the name change. So making it truly a community effort in hopes that it'll make the cultural shift a little, in our thinking a little easier, but bringing along families who, aren't on a board or aren't part of a student organization or, some extracurricular activity, just moving through the change as a community as a whole, rather than saying, okay, this is what a small group of us got together and decided, and this is what we're doing.
Definitely. I think that there's a lot of ways to take that work up. I can, we like to think about who has a seat at the table, who may have expressed a lot of beliefs in the past that were ignored. And so how are we really prioritizing those voices? When we think about other name changes, for example, to what extent have students been prioritized. So I think Agassiz school, elementary put forward a very transformative process for others to follow and to build on. In terms of, I think what Dr. Sweeney said about the equity leadership team and how do you have student representation on that, parent representation, community members, how I think, Tina, I've heard you say too, just how do we get that message out, whether that's through email, grassroots mobilization, in our classrooms, and so I think that there's a lot of different ways to think about that. We also, in the racial equity impact assessment that's available on the CPS Equity website, the first two questions we ask are, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And then secondly, who has a seat at the table? And we recognize that we may have identified the wrong problem and jumped to question number two, who has a seat at the table? But when we change the membership at who's at the table, that may take us back to our equity challenge and resituate it. So we see that there's that interplay between the problem we're trying to solve and who's at the table. And, we do believe that if we're putting most impacted communities at the center, we're going to have a different conversation about transformation, lived experiences, and so, we like to think about this sort of equity audit process. Who are our greatest needs groups? Who's furthest from the targeted universalist goal? And how are we supporting them? And by supporting those furthest from the goal, then that will have a transformative impact for all other students in the system. So, I don't think, I will just say, I completely agree with Dr. Sweeney. There's no quick fix on this. We think it is long-term, complex work, and we really appreciate the work your school community is taking up. And, we also think the onus here is collective. So how are, what is the mirror and window work that we need to engage in? And I think, that's part of the equity assessment too, that we engaged in with name change, is thinking about who is in our community, who's represented in this data, who's missing, how did folks show up in the data? And what does that tell us about lived experiences in our school?
And to that point, your school in particular had a very close vote between Harriet Tubman and Katherine Johnson. You'll have to figure out like what is the learning for your school and your community, and how do you approach whenever the name change is approved, and whoever sort of makes that final decision, you will have to learn about who that person is, whether they, what is the teaching that we need to learn about that person? What does that represent for us as a community? Like all of those things have to be considered. And that's why I think it's really about this community binding first, and really thinking through some things and learning together before it sort of goes into a broader scope, right? And, you might get the phone calls and say, people who've never been engaged, like, when did this happen? And you'll get all of that. And you got to sort of hang out and let the smoke clear from the stage, right? And then say, like, how do we move forward? So like all of that is going to come up. I do think you have to vote on the name, because it can't be World School of Excellence. It can't be that. So in order for it to go to the board, that has to be voted on. I don't know, special meeting tonight, or that has to be decided when that special meeting is to get. I'll be honest, I don't remember the LSC rules about voting. It's been a while, but that has to be decided, and it has to be soon. And when I say Julie,
If this was an agenda item, did we actually have to put in there specifically that we were going to vote on that?
That is my understanding, that we have to indicate what items we are going to make decisions on before on the agenda, so our community knows.
Also, I just wanted to jump in with a little bit more about Katherine Johnson and Harriet Tubman. It was a very close vote. I think to Dr. Sweeney's point, overall, you know, the Black population in the school did vote for Katherine Johnson. And so did the overall population. So I think that, right, that's something that the Office of Network Supports has to think about in terms of the ranking. And, you know, so, and I think, you know, another thing is look at the conversation around the Obama Library, for example, and where that would be positioned in the city. From the Equity Office's standpoint, we have to think about that. We do have 300 schools that are majority Black or Latinx, up to 99%. So I just mentioned that to say, you know, as you're going to be revisiting the names themselves, I think it's worth thinking about that difference in terms of again, should a Harriet Tubman be reserved for an all-Black school, for example, on the South or West Side? I think that there are folks in Chicago who would say that. I think that we saw that dialogue around the placement of the Obama's library itself. So that was, and Dr. Sweeney and I will put that all in note form for you to think about. But if it sounds like we're now saying there's an opportunity to revisit the vote itself, I want to include that in the conversation.
So, Liam, I know Dr. Sweeney had to jump for a second. In order to get this then to a board meeting in March, when would a special meeting have to be held? Like when, I don't know how the progression leads to the board meeting. When does something need to be like resubmitted, or how does that work? Because you're making valid points on top of the, you know, I just want to make sure we know, like backtracking from when a board vote would be, when certain things need to be submitted or finalized, for lack of a better word, on our end for that to happen.
I'm sorry, I missed the first part.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just asking. So Liam was posing some questions, just thinking through different elements around the name itself, on top of the whole like World School of Excellence and World School issue. And so if it does, knowing we have to go to a special meeting, and if we start grappling with these bigger questions, as well as the just shifting from the World School of Excellence, when back mapping from the 24th, I'm not sure what the progression is leading to a board meeting. What would we need to have, or by when, for it to still land at a March board meeting?
ASAP. I think any time soon. So part of what happens is, because ultimately the possibilities of the names are not changing, right? There are 3 names in the queue. A name will be selected based on the board policy as it stands. We're actually going to go before the board and say we want to change some elements of the policy later on. But I say all that to say there is like a placeholder there now, and I think the end part of the name is easier, but you want to do it soon. And I will say that, like, I'll start giving briefs to the board soon, just about, they'll ask me about this process. What did you all do? Was it fair? Who did you listen to? Which is a part of the reason I'm glad we had the special meeting for families of color, just say that there was space just for those particular voices. So I feel like the process is fair according to what the policy is asking for. So the placeholder for the name, I just think we need to do it ASAP.
So I guess for me, I mean, some of the questions that Liam just brought up are worth discussion. So I don't know, like, yeah, I'm just trying to operationalize in my head. Tina, I don't know if you and I need to connect on when we would try and do a special meeting. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'll do like last time and farm out some ideas for dates, but it sounds like we need to get it done this week. And it will be that one item on the agenda. Well, I should say we always have to have public participation, but we'll see if we can get it done this week.
Can I just ask clarity? Because I feel like there seemed to be a little bit of difference between what Maurice was saying and what Liam was saying, because it seemed like Liam was saying maybe we need to have a bigger discussion about the 3 names. And then Maurice was saying, no, we have the 3 names. There's no discussion there. It's really just the end of it because the board has already gotten the 3 names.
No, what I'm saying is the 3 names that are in the process, like you're not adding a new name. You're not coming back saying that these are not the names that we want to present to the board. That key element, that's the most important key element, because that's where students show there is no, I know, I'm not saying you did anything wrong. But the World School of Excellence part is what is affiliated or copywritten per se for another organization. That's why.
Completely. Yeah, but I just like the bigger picture discussion. I thought we were that ship has sailed and we have our 3 names and we're not changing from that. It's just the end part, right?
You can discuss wait, let me slow down. I am not saying what you all can or cannot discuss. I don't have that right to do that. That's the LSC's choice. What I am saying is that the World School of Excellence is owned by someone else, and that has to be corrected. So whether you all say we want to go back and talk about names, you cannot, I won't say you cannot deviate from the names on the list, but you would have to go through another process, and I don't think that you want to find any other names. So I hope that clarifies to the point that I missed something.
But then I think maybe I misunderstood, and maybe Liam was saying we could talk about reordering based on how students voted, how students of color voted. Maybe we should rethink what order we put them in based on those voices that we heard, and that between the 3 that are submitted. Is that something maybe we should be talking about?
From my end, go ahead, Tina, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, out of respect for everyone's time, I think there will be a special meeting. That agenda item will be on there. And that's a discussion we can have at that time, actually, whether or not we want to revisit the ranking. So just out of everyone's respect for everyone's time, I'd like to just leave it there that there will be a special meeting to discuss and to vote on a new ending.
And what triggered when we submitted information to the board in World School of Excellence, essentially the law department came back and said, nope, you can't use that. So that's why it triggered the new learning for me.
Me too.
Well, y'all, I hope that you had dinner, because it's 7:34, and y'all, I hung out much longer than I was in. Nicholas said, no, you didn't have dinner. Sorry.
Well, we certainly appreciate both you and Liam coming to the meeting and providing the information. It's very helpful and gives us a lot to think about now and moving forward, and definitely confidence that we're not going to be walking into the wilderness alone. So thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Mira, did you have anything else as far as like principal report? You're good?
No, I'm good. I don't want you to, I don't know if you want me to just jump to CIWP quick, because it's kind of the next relevant thing.
Have at it.
All right. So I submitted, I sent out to all of you kind of what I'm using as a working document with the CIWP team around our 4 strategies that we've already identified and approved last year with action items under them. And then in addition to that, the fifth strategy around equity that we have created a draft of and are working on action items, but the equity one is far from ready for like LSC approval at any point right now. But what we grappled with really, and we had a great meeting, well, I thought it was a great meeting as a CIWP committee, really grappling with, does equity have to solely live on its own, and what we felt was equity should really be embedded throughout the CIWP. So what we decided to do was go back and look through all the strategies from the equity lens and thinking about liberatory thinking, like from the CPS equity framework, liberatory thinking, inclusive partnerships, equity of resources, and from looking at all of our strategies in that lens to think about what language needs to be embedded or how we can better articulate what we need to work on while separating some equity pieces, but also embedding equity pieces by just shifting the way we're looking at the entirety of our school improvement planning. So what you see is how things currently lay out. We are meeting again next week as a CIWP team to kind of go through those different steps that I just identified. And in addition, and anyone on this call who's on the CIWP team, we're also going to need to start thinking through what in this current plan really should be put on hold based on our current environment and kind of the world we're in, what has become more of a priority, and maybe what's taken kind of a back seat in terms of what we can do and what's most needed at this time. So that's kind of where the CIWP team's work will be. In the next couple of months, you will be presented with a CIWP, and most likely accompanying that will be our new budget for next year, because that will be coming very soon. So that's really the highlights. I know we said we would pick a CIWP focus for me to speak on each month. So I don't know. I honestly think next month you may want to hear more about the meeting that we're having next week, because that may involve a lot of tweaks and changes that we would want to look at in its entirety, which I'm happy to do. I just don't think we want to pull one segment out right now, because we're going to be nearing the time where we need to finalize and approve anyway. So it probably makes more sense to be looking at it as a whole.
Thank you for sharing, Mira. I had a question. Considering the conversation we have with Dr. Sweeney and Mr. Bird, and the ongoing work that you're doing with the district, more particularly, and recognizing that these are action steps that we're working towards in the CIWP, how will those action steps, how will these conversations inform the action steps within the CIWP, specifically around equity?
Yeah. I think you're hitting a lot to the point that we discussed, which is really, and kind of what's changed the way I look at things, is looking at everything from an equity lens, which is how we kind of shifted from thinking like equity is just its own little strategy with like all these action items underneath it, more toward looking at everything under this umbrella. How do we need to shift what we're doing in each area to align with the equity framework? So it really shifts kind of the way we're looking at it in its entirety. And I think certain pieces, I think what's going to be the hardest for us is much to what Tina spoke to before, like what do you bite off first? What comes first? What can you do at the same time without totally overwhelming everyone? And knowing that there's a lot of really deep learning that has to happen to shift practice and thinking. And you can't do that in a time where you're trying to do 2,000 things at once. And so thinking very strategically about how do we prioritize the different steps and how do we do it in a way where we can get where we want to go. And so the real short answer is this whole conversation that we just had has kind of refocused and reframed how we're looking at the entirety of our school improvement planning. That's really a very deep answer, but a short answer, but it really is the truth.
How can we get an entire copy? That's my, oh, sorry, I thought someone else was talking, but it was just the echo of myself. Hello, me. Shush. How do we all get a copy of the full, where can I find the full CIWP? And just so for LSC members, I did go to that 5-hour LSC thing on Saturday. And one of their big thing was for all LSC members is we should all be printing out the CIWP and marking it up and really owning the document and not just getting our, like, we should be really invested in it so that we know exactly what is being presented to us. But so I want to print it out. In fact, I was going to say, can we all get a copy at the meeting tonight? And then I remembered we don't see each other in real life. I have to do it myself.
So yeah, the entirety of the document, if you go to cps.edu and you go to our school, you can find it there. You can also go to a CIW, I think it's ciwp.cps.edu, I think is the actual exact site. It's a very lengthy document. And to be honest with you, I don't find that it prints out in a very helpful way. So for me, looking at it in this way, just logistically, like, makes more sense. But you can, I mean, feel free. It's a public document. It just doesn't, to me, print and lay out very well to present, or, you know, that's all.
Mayor, are you okay if I add that link to the chat?
Can I?
No, I'm saying I can do it, but are you okay if I put that there for folks that, I'll add the link to the document in the chat.
Are there any other questions, or are there any questions about CIWP? I agree with you, Mira, as far as focus, rather than focusing on a specific piece for the April meeting, that we just have the overall item and discuss the outcomes of the March meeting. And I think that's really a positive, a turn in a positive direction, with viewing everything through an equity lens rather than having one equity theory of action. That's smart. Okay, we'll move on to budget transfers and approval, which I believe there are none. Is that correct?
Yep, no, nothing.
Okay, and then next on the agenda is the IB report.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yeah, I had one question. Is Miss Perillas on?
No, she's not. I don't think, anyway. But I think Miss McNally's here, depending on which which IB program. Sorry, I can't speak.
You know, it's just a general question, so she can probably help. You know, we talk so much about IB curriculum and the units of inquiry, and just wondering if the IB program, not locally, not Agassiz program, but just the overall
Organization.
theory of learning. Yeah, the overall organization and their theory of learning. Are they doing any kind of examination or sharing any material as far as equity? I mean, because so many times our conversation about IB is just like specific to these IB theories. And is there any kind of equity analysis going on in that organization to address that type of work?
Michelle, Miss McNally, are you here somewhere?
Yep, I'm here. You
There you
can't
are.
see me? I put myself on camera.
I can see you now.
Yeah, there's a website called My IB, which holds a lot of the units that teachers can look through and peruse, and you know, see if there's things that are similar. But the one thing is that, you know, IB is a framework, so everybody has their own curriculum. So I have yet to really see anything that would stand out to me as far as equity, but it's a website that is not, the interface is not so friendly. Like, I sometimes have to ask other coordinators where to find things. So I can certainly try to like keep that in the forefront of my mind and see if there is anything out there. And one of the other things is that there's a pool of coordinators in the district that that certainly I can ask, or I even go on the coordinator's Facebook page and there's people that are, they just are very responsive. So one of the things that I love about the program is that, you have those resources and the people that you can network with. So I'm sure it's out there. I just haven't found it yet.
Okay, thank you.
Of course.
I'm just trying to think through supports for teachers as they have to write these units, and the units get reviewed, and then and the expectation that they use an equity lens for everything, and the focus on using it for curriculum. Just what supports are there for them, so that they're not trying to marry two opposing forces. Not that they are, but just throwing out an example. But just something to help them do that in parallel path. So yeah, if there are any resources, I would love to hear about them. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Any other questions on IB report? Okay, we'll move on to fundraising updates and approvals. I don't believe there are any to approve. I did, Mary, you did send out the information that showed the wonderful ways that efforts are being supported for remote learning. I don't know if you or Patty have anything to speak to.
I'm sorry, I start talking and then realize I'm on mute still. I can't stand it. I mean, I can just say the level of appreciation we have, not only for friends of like trying to fundraise in this environment, because I know that's incredibly challenging and a very hard balance. But the level of appreciation we have for everyone who has graciously donated, and just how much we've been able to accomplish with the funds that have been raised in this current environment, specifically to support this current environment, is just really, I mean, very, very much appreciated. And as I see this hybrid learning roll out, and I walk in classrooms and there's tripods set up and being moved around so kids can see from different vantage points, like all those tripods, and that's just one example, were through the donated funds. So that's one very specific example. Or walk in and see, students sitting on a floor circle that's being used as a marker to make sure they can get out of their seat and move somewhere, but still be socially distant. Like very concrete ways that those funds have helped. So just a lot of gratitude for that. And, the Friends of Board for pursuing in this environment on top of the actual donations themselves. So I don't know, Patty, if you have anything to add.
No, I don't know if my camera's working or not. Something's weird with Google Meet. So if you can't see me, sorry. Yeah, I might be blurry, whatever. No, I'm just grateful to the community for the support we've received so far, even with the pledge drive that we're in the middle of, and we're extending it a week. So we can try to see if we can get a little bit more, since we did cancel our final fundraisers of the year. So I'm just grateful to the community for the support. I know it's been tough times for a lot of people, and we've tried to be very cognizant of that and not put any pressure or any demands on the community, or really even focus on incentive prizes based on donations. We just, we wanted to be sensitive to the community, and we're just grateful for that. So, and I appreciate the staff showing the love and sending the great testimonials that we got, and showing how the funds are being used. That's really been a huge joy for us to see that it's being used the way it is. So thank you.
Thank you, Patty. Well done. And thank you, Mira, as well. Glad to hear that the pledge is being extended. So good job. Well done. The next item is committee updates. Just a refresher, we have three committees that are kind of in their inception stage. We have the equity committee that will be formed. We also have a Lori. I don't know the official name. Is it diverse learner and?
I think the committee, the official name is like diverse learners, and then we're coming up with a cuter name for it, so that
Okay.
there's an acronym. Because I was like, oh, education, inclusive education allies, and they're all like, you need a cute name. So we'll come up with that. Ms. Rosenberg and I don't want to take up too much time. I'll send out a full update. We just had an initial where do we see this going and how do we want to work it in? And then we want to reach out to Mira with some of our ideas, and our tentative date for our a meeting would be on Wednesday, the 24th at 6 p.m. But basically we just talked about she's our case manager. For those of you who don't know, we touched base about setting up a communication plan, a monthly newsletter for providers and parents. And so we're starting to do the work, and we're going to take it slow and really find our voice, but things are moving forward, and we will keep you all informed.
Okay, great. There's also the parent or the communication and engagement committee. Pretty much the same thing, getting our thoughts together and trying to hone in on what exactly we're going to do and how we want to do it. But I will say to everyone to think about those committees and what you would like to be involved in. And I'm not just talking to board members, I'm talking to our community at large, because we will need parents and community support for all of the work. That brings us to public participation. And Mira, you have the sign up, correct? Okay. And I know there was at least one person who had some trouble with the form. I haven't seen anyone sign up through the chat, and I checked the email a few minutes ago and I did not have any additional names. Did you have any additional, Mira?
No.
Okay, but you do have Molly on there, right?
Yep.
In the list, okay. So I will read the blurb, and Mac, if you would, as Sergeant at Arms, if you would like to take over timing as your first order of business, you're welcome to do so. Members of the public are welcome to make comments and ask questions, but must sign in to participate. The public is called upon to speak in the order they sign in. The public is kindly requested to limit their comments and questions to 3 minutes. Based on the comments or questions, the principal may address some concerns directly and, if necessary, create an action step for the LSC to follow up with involved parties at a future date. While the LSC will do its best to address any comments or questions when necessary, more time may be needed to adequately address a particular concern. Okay, Mira.
Yep. First one who signed up was Paul Rensolis, but I'm not sure if Paul, it doesn't sound like you necessarily wanted to speak, more observe, but I'm going to give you the opportunity if you would like. Or not. Maybe
no, he did that by mistake. He was just going to listen.
Okay. I thought I wanted to make sure I understood his comment right. Just making sure.
Thank you.
Okay. Next on the list is, Mason Rodriguez. And I don't know if I saw him sign on, a student. I can tell you what he wanted to speak about, though. He wants us to know that recess should be longer. So thank you, Mason. Next on the list is Patty Lenkoff. And I know Patty's here.
I really don't have anything. I just agree with Mason. Let's give them more recess. I'll go with that. I really don't have anything to say. So thanks, guys.
Okay. Next would be Molly, who's having a hard, I have Molly, and then I have one more who signed up in the Google form. So Molly. Or no? Okay. Then, last but not least, Laura Franz.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Wow, now I know how my kids feel. It's all the Zooming. Let's see here. I'm Laura, in case anyone doesn't know who I am, and I'm a parent of 3 kiddos at the school. I'm just gonna read because I get nervous and rambly. So my 3 kids are in pre-K, first and second. And first of all, I'd just like to say a huge thank you to the teachers and the school staff as they do their best to serve the students in these incredibly difficult times. We feel extremely fortunate to have access to such amazing teachers and support staff. So thank you to everybody. You can really see that it's a team effort from a parent's perspective. My question is just, it's about the reading curriculum. And I'm just kind of looking for an understanding of how the school kind of makes these decisions on what it uses. And I start to kind of just look into it a little bit more, and in terms of what the school uses, and it's the Lucy Calkins Units of Studies program. And I do see positive aspects like the love of learning and reading and writing. So I do see positives, but sometimes I just worry that it doesn't do enough to help struggling readers and the kids who have the reading disabilities. I do know that there's a phonics component to it, but the bulk of the program seems to rely on the cueing system. The level books are mainly based on pictures and repetition, not the phonics. And a lot of my concern actually comes from Lucy Calkins herself, who when I was trying to do some research on it, she has recently put out a statement in response to some recent criticism and some of the reading research that's been out there. And I quote, she said, "Poring over the work of contemporary reading researchers has led us to believe that aspects of balanced literacy need some rebalancing." She adds that they are planning to add a year-long phonological awareness curriculum, amending the way they suggest teachers prompt kids on unfamiliar words, and will be releasing a set of decodable books. She also noted that kids with dyslexia and kids that continue to struggle will benefit from reading mostly decodable books until they have a solid grasp of the phonics concepts. So I'm just like kind of giving that background just to ask if the school is kind of aware of these recent changes that Calkins herself is talking about making to the program. Will the school have access to any of those curriculum changes or resources that her program puts out, like those decodable books that she's been talking about? And then also just in general, when or how often does the school evaluate the effectiveness of their chosen programs? And more specifically, with kids with, certified learning disabilities, there's anyone certified in like the Orton Gillingham or the Wilson approach at school? I know you guys have done some training on it. I was just wondering if anyone was specifically certified in that. And just again, thank you to everybody and everything that you guys all do at the school, LSC, parents, students and staff. And Mason, I think, makes an excellent point. And we really enjoy being part of the Bulldog community these last few years. So thank you to everybody. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Laura. Tina, that's all that I had. I don't know if you had anyone else.
No, I did not see anyone else.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Mason. If we are as successful as we've been the first few days, we will be able to look at adding some additional recess options. It's a kind of a play-by-ear model at this point, but we definitely agree fresh air and movement are wonderful things. In terms of reading curriculum, yes, Laura, absolutely been looking at Lucy Calkins' most recent kind of publications around what she's discovering and the need for more phonics within a balanced literacy approach. It's something that we've started discussing. We do use Words Their Way as a staff in terms of getting a better handle on like kind of the decoding and the spelling structures and where kids need support. We have some staff who have attended different training modules with Wilson and Orton Gillingham. But, in the remote world that we're in, the short-term answer is we spent money this year to make sure that what we did have for Lucy was transferable to an online platform. But I don't know if that will transfer to like the additional resources and the books that you're referencing specific to decoding or not. Those are items that, we need to delve more into now that we're kind of more stabilized in terms of where we are with remote learning, hybrid. Well, I say more stabilized. We've done remote learning for 3 days, but a little more stabilized in terms of what we can expect and kind of devote more time and energy to what that will look like. But most definitely know that the phonics component is something that needs to be kind of addressed in terms of how we look at our literacy structures and being more balanced. So the short answer is yes, we're aware and we'll look at it. But I can't say we've done extensive research at this point.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
I just want to, this is Lori, I just want to throw out, I've had other parents approach me about a lack of like a reading specialist and more assistance with reading, not just for diverse learners, but across the board. And so I just wanted to, in case you're on here and you're listening, I'm bringing it up that they're also concerned about that. So thank you for speaking on that. And also I would like to be on the record that I agree with Mason.
Okay, I think that's it for public participation. And so the next item on the list, on the agenda, bylaws and rules of conduct. The LSC, as well as Posted to Public, receive proposed edits to the bylaws and rules of conduct. Is there a motion on the floor?
I just want everyone to know, and Tina and Sarah, I did email you ahead of the meeting, that even if the bylaws do get approved this evening, just so everyone knows, they have to be reviewed by local school council and the law department. And so until that review happens and we get final approval, we would be operating under our current bylaws. So I just, before we even discuss motions and all that, wanted to put that out there.
Okay, thank you, Mira.
So I'll motion to approve the edits for the bylaws and the rules of conduct.
I will second.
Okay, discussion.
I just wanted to say thank you to the committee that put these together. It reflects obviously a lot of work. I thought the edits were very thoughtful, and I think we're going to be moving in a more productive and thoughtful direction as a result of these. So thank you to everyone who had kind of contributed.
Thank you, Mac, and I'll second that, especially to members on the committee who took their time to serve and to review and to think through. It was a tremendous effort, and I'm grateful for those who served in the committee. Thank you.
I am so sorry. I just remember we had talked about this in the edits, but I'm not sure if we ever got there. Did we ever say that we could like vote by thumbs up or thumbs down if we're on Zoom? Like we could raise hands in person?
No.
I just do roll call. It's so boring.
Yeah, has a lot of time to every vote.
So I don't know.
And to answer to that, Kate, I don't like. I think that's something we can decide as an LSC, like kind of how we run the meeting. That doesn't have to be in the bio. You know, like things in the bylaws are like, okay, we have to follow those. But then obviously, you know, the way we do certain things in the meeting, you know, that's we can. I was going to suggest it earlier in the meeting when we were all, you know, having technical difficulties. But yes, just using like the raise hand button or something like that. So I think those are things, you know, that we don't have to have written in the change the bylaws for that to happen. Yes.
And frankly, as long as we come up with the right number at the end, we know we got it right. You know, once we get the raised hands counted. I definitely echo the sentiment, the hard work and the time and the thought that's gone into these suggested changes to the bylaws. So thank you all for that. And thank you for being nimble and quick in your activity. So appreciate it. Is there any more discussion? Okay, if there is no discussion, we will vote. All in favor, raise your hand.
Well, I think, does it have to be roll call?
I don't think it has to be.
Oh, okay.
That was the
Okay.
suggestion.
Just keep your hands up so I can record the hands hands up. I see Lori, Mac, Cindy, Kirsten, Kate, Tina, and my hand is up. Did I get everyone with hands up?
Mine is up as well.
Thank you, Nick. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Those who oppose.
I oppose.
Any abstentions?
Any abstain? I'm sorry. Okay. And Marilyn, I know you might have to unmute.
She raised her hand and said,
Marilyn opposed and Emily abstained.
Okay, thank you. So I have a total of 1, 2, 3, 8 yays, 2 nays, and 1 abstain.
Okay, the motion carries that we accept the bylaws and rules of order, or sorry, rules of conduct as submitted. Mira, I will follow up with you offline as far as the discussion of what needs to be done to get those ratified or whatever by legal.
Can
Did I hear someone?
I just wanted to say that just for public participants here, I think we had a lot of discussions about how meetings work on Zoom and trying to make sure that we were being accessible for public participation and for people who wanted to speak. But I think one of the things that we talked about was taking the chat private so that people could use it for administrative tools, but it not be a public forum where people could post things, because we've had a lot of experience with other LSCs that have had some issues. And so I just don't want anyone to think that that change was to decrease any participation or anything. It was more of protecting the community and making sure that anyone who's speaking, we want anyone who wants to speak to be able to speak, but we need to make sure that we're doing it in a safe and respectful way. And so I just wanted to put that out there, that we really had a long conversation about that. But there's been some other schools that have had people put things in chats anonymously that have been very destructive to the school community. And we really just don't want that to be a possibility, because we really want to work on all of us respecting each other, but also being open to what everyone has to say. And so just wanted to put that out there in case anyone notices, once these get approved, that they would notice that change. And it was a very long discussion.
Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Kate.
Okay, the next item on the agenda are action items, the next step, where we discuss previous action items, the next step, capture any ongoing activity with those, and capture any new action items based on this meeting. Sarah, do you have those? If not, I've been yeah, if not, I've been writing them down, I think.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I will lean on your leadership.
Oh, please, take capture of the entire meeting. I don't mind doing this at all. Okay, so one thing that has carried over is that for the April meeting, we were planning to have the strategic plan on the agenda. That was sent out right after last month's meeting by Mira, so we should have that to review between now and then. So that is on the agenda for April. Nick, you were going to follow up regarding the extracurricular activities and how those were offered out, and whether or not we need to gird up those efforts to make sure they were equitable. Mira, you were going to follow up on the grade level percentage of school students that showed up for in-person learning. I will be contacting all of you to have a special meeting to vote on the ending of the name, to get that taken care of, preferably this week. And then also, Mira, I'm going to follow up with you regarding the next steps for getting the bylaws and rules of conduct ratified.
Tina, really quickly,
Mhm.
I believe with the Open Meetings Act, we need 48 hours of notice, so we probably couldn't schedule it till Monday at the earliest.
Oh, you know what? I forget this is Wednesday. I'm thinking, okay, I mean next week, not this week. I'm sorry.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you, Mac.
No, just making sure. We could do Friday at 8 p.m. if everyone wants, but
Oh,
that might not
great.
be.
Yeah. Okay. All right. The next regular meeting is April 7th at 6 p.m. It will be a virtual meeting. Is that correct? Do you have the dates, Mira? Is that correct? That sounds weird to me. Okay. So the next virtual meeting is April 7th.
April 7th is correct because the week before we're on break.
Okay, maybe that's what was sticking in my mind. Okay, great. So April 7th at 6 p.m. And the next item on the agenda is to adjourn. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Okay, we have Mac and Emily. Okay, all in favor, or is there any discussion? All in favor of adjourning? Please raise your hand.
That looks unanimous.
So opposed? None. Abstained? Opposed? None. Thank you, everyone who calling in, and everyone have a good night.
Thanks. Bye.